Let me just say this. On the one hand, we have these desires to satisfy our animal cravings. It's there. It's in us. On the other hand, we want to rise above our animal cravings, and we want to think of ourselves as a higher form of life than the animals. On the one hand, we want what the flesh wants. We do. We want that extra piece of cake. We want that bigger house. We want that person. We want what the flesh wants. On the other hand, we want to be spiritual. We want to be more than that. On the one hand, we want to be our own God, calling the shots for our lives. On the other hand, we very much want a relationship with our Father, leading us, guiding us, submitting to Him. So it's an oversimplification to say, Lord, you made me like this. You gave me these desires. How can you blame me for living in those desires? Because the truth is, those are not the only desires He gave you. And if you look deeply in yourself, He didn't just give you the one set of desires. He also gave you the other set of desires. So if the argument applies to the one thing, it must also apply to the other thing. I just finished reading a autobiography of Janice Gay, the child bride of Marvin Gaye, his second wife. And apparently there was a point in his life where he would be on tour, and Marvin Gaye would book 3 hotel rooms. He would book 3 hotel rooms, so he'd be on tour. He'd book 1 hotel room for himself and his wife, or whichever woman he was with at the time. And he would book a second hotel room for his drug dealer. Of course, Marvin Gaye had a very bad heroin habit, particularly late in his life. So he'd book another room for his drug dealer, and the third room he would book for his pastor. And I just think that's very, very true to form for all human beings. We just always book the 3 rooms. Everywhere we go, we've got the room for ourselves, but we make sure there's also the other room we can go in for our lusts and our desires and our our base things about us. No, we also want the room for the pastor. We also want the room for the God things and the spiritual things, to feel close to God and love and so on. We are competing desires. We are not one set of desires. We have all 3 rooms, each of us. And sometimes we just pick the one. This is what human beings do. Sometimes we just pick the one and we say the other isn't real and the other doesn't matter. Sometimes we just say, forget about the spiritual room. I'm just going to live this thing. This is who I am. So be it. And sometimes we try to pretend like the fleshly room doesn't exist, and we just say, no, I'm just a spiritual person. I don't have those struggles. I don't worry about that stuff anymore. Sometimes we try to reconcile them. We try to look for some sort of way to say, yes, this is the great balance of my life or things. And people come up with these philosophies of how to sort of make sense of the hypocrisy of the 2 rooms. And you can't make sense of them because you're a hypocrite. Sometimes we just try to pretend that we're not exposed, that the 2 rooms don't expose our own hypocrisy. And then if we're really sort of feeling, introspective or something, we'll think about it in a metaphysical sense, and we'll even think about God for a minute. And if only for a few moments, we'll want God to forgive us for the 1 room. We'll want Him to be a God of grace that overlooks our sins. We want that, to look the other way. But for the things that other people have done in their bad room, in their drug room, well, we want God to be a God of justice. And we don't want Him to look the other way. And we all feel trapped by it all. The internal conflict, the theological conflict, the philosophical conflict, it leaves us exposed. And if we're honest, it leaves us lost and hopeless. And we cannot find a way out of this maze for our minds. And so Paul says, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, this incredible thing. He says, what if? Two of the most powerful words in the English language. What if? These two words open, locked mental models. They humbly ask the question, what if we're wrong? What if there's another way? What if there's another explanation? It's an experiment for the mind. And that's what he's doing here. It holds in itself, these two words hold in themselves the whole wonder and process of scientific discovery, of intellectual development, of dialectics, of philosophy. Anything human beings have ever discovered, it's because someone first said, what if? Anything. The world is flat. Obviously, the world is flat. What if it isn't? What if it's a sphere? Galileo. Well, obviously everything orbits around the earth. It's the center of the universe. What if it isn't? I love the sort of story of innovation and the way that things sort of come to be that are not. I don't know. Who was the first person to heat sand? To say, hey, there's some sand. What if we heat this, like massively heat this sand and see what happens to it, and somehow glass is formed through the heating of sand? And think of all that sort of come from that one discovery. This one question, what if we overheat sand and then manipulate it somehow into something, and we have this translucent material that we could do all kinds of things with? Hey, what if we find a way to make it clear, and then they make it clear, and then all of a sudden you have windows? And what if we add mercury to it, and then all of a sudden you have this thing called the mirror? By the way, I don't know of another invention in human history which more shaped philosophy. In other words, a piece of hardware which more changed the way we think about ourselves than the mirror. I mean, there was a time when people couldn't look at themselves. They didn't know what they looked like. And so guess what? It was just like feeling like we're not the center of the universe. And we just looked around at other people and said, man, the world is happening out there, outside of myself. And then one day we saw ourselves for the first time. This is interesting, And literally, whatever you say, sort of self-centered human philosophy is born at the time of the mirror. The invention of the mirror. And all of a sudden we're interested in knowing ourselves, understanding who is this person? Who is this lovely, lovely person on the other side of this mirror? Who are you? Tell me your secrets. Who's this wonder before my own eyes? And then, somebody else is like, I think it's like the printing press. You can make an argument that the internet, and then before that, the printing press. These are massive tectonic shifts in technology and in human advancement, societally, whatever. And you go back to something like the printing press, and what it was they looked at a wine press, the technology of a wine press, and they said, man, what if we put ink on type and we use that same equipment to print? To mass produce writing. And so then, of course, because of the printing press, now you have anyone can read, and anyone can have any text. And you know what? This is very interesting. Then people started realizing, because they started getting books, they started buying books and having access to books, they started realizing they had bad eyesight. No one really cared. No one really mattered. It's like, is that a cow? I think so. We're good. That's good enough. Is that you, honey? Yeah, that's good enough. And then all of a sudden we're like, I have to read? Man, my eyes really suck. And so they said, well, what if we took that glass that we had invented, and what if we shaped it in such a way that we could magnify the world? And All of a sudden, people could see, they could read, and not just that, they could see far away. Now you have the invention of the telescope, where now we can see the stars and understand what's happening in the cosmos, and astronomy and astrophysics. That whole field in science is born. And even more significantly, what if we took that magnification and we look down at the very smallest pieces of human life, and the whole field of biology and microbiology is born. The discovery of bacteria, everything almost now we know about modern medical science is because of this. Somebody heated sand. Somebody said, what if? It is the humble and powerful threat to the status quo. What if? Quietly unmaking our deepest held and unchallenged assumptions. Now I'm not looking forward to it, but there's a presidential election coming up. And it's not that I'm not looking forward to it because I don't believe in the democratic process. It's not why. It's because Christians. That's why. Just because Christians. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I just feel like, I don't know. Leanne told me recently that you can do analytics on your Twitter account. And so on the Underground's Twitter account, they can tell you how many of your Twitter followers are Democrat and how many are Republican. Do you want to guess what the Underground is? Do you want to guess what our percentage is, Democrat to Republican? Anybody? Just turn to a neighbor and just tell them what you think the percentage is, Democrat to Republican, on our kind of Twitter followers. Give it a shot. Just throw it out there. You know what the answer is? You know what the answer is? Exactly 50-50. So on the one hand, I'm like, that's awesome. And on the other hand, I'm like, that's horrible. This is going to be ugly. But the truth is, I do think to some degree we've sort of rised above it, which we should. But the question I have is, like, if you come from a people that would say, for example, something as ignorant as, if you are a Christian, you must be Republican. And I'm saying that's ignorant because you're sitting in the room with half people that would say that would say the opposite. But if you come from people that say, if you are a Christian, you must be a Democrat. If you say something like that, then I think one of the most important questions you could ask yourself, or ask your friends, or ask your family is, like, what if that isn't true? What if? What if our deeply held assumptions and prejudices for the status quo as we see it, what if that isn't the case? To me, this is what unlocks us as human beings. This is how we become open to real truth, to transcendent things, is by being willing, eager even, to ask and answer that question. What if it isn't that way? What if there's another way of looking at it? And if it's allowed to run riot in our internal assumptions too, think about that. Not just the way we look at the world beyond us, but what about inside us? What about ourselves, our internal assumptions? Things we feel deeply like we're worthless, or we're ugly, or we're unwanted, or we have no purpose, or we have no future. What if? What if you're valued? What if you're beautiful? What if you're desired? What if you're designed for something? What if you're destined? It is the basis, I'm saying, for all great discoveries, including internal discoveries. To start with the question of what if. It's an experiment for the mind that challenges a prevailing theory, conventional thinking, the accepted answer. And by the way, Jesus did it more than anyone. He was the master of this way of thinking. People came to him one time, they took a blind man before him. I just can't even imagine using a blind man for an argument, but they did. They took a blind man, they put him before him, and they said, Lord, tell us, answer us, who sinned, this man or his parents? Remember that story, John 9? Who sinned, this man or his parents? This is what we do. We create binary thinking. This is what we do. We think it's either this or that. We love that. We love to create false dualisms because it's simple, because we don't like complexity, because we're confused by it. We're not comfortable with being confused. That's why we like dogma. That's why we say, look, if you're Christian, you're this, you're not that. There's no way you could be the other thing. That's too difficult, too confusing. We're lazy intellectually and spiritually. And so they say, which one sinned, Lord? You know, they give him the debate. Which one sinned, this man or his parents? There's the binary. It's either this or it's that. Which one sinned? And what does Jesus say? He says, neither. Neither. Don't bring me your foolish binary questions. I'm not falling for that. Neither. This man is blind, he says, so that the glory of God would be revealed in his life. This is the third way. The purpose of God is not, almost never, the way we create these binary choices for God. God, if you love me, you'll do this for me, and if you don't love me, you won't. You're not giving me this thing that I've asked for, so you must not love me. That kind of binary thinking, it obviously doesn't lock up God. He's not like, oh, well, I better do this for you because you're passively, aggressively manipulating me in prayer, you know. I don't want you to think I don't love you. So here's an A in the test you didn't study for, you know. He said, no, there's another way. There's my way. What if it was neither? I mean, he goes after even the 10 Commandments. You've heard an eye for an eye. That pleases God, right? He said, what if it doesn't? What if an eye for an eye doesn't please God? What if taking the eye of even your enemy isn't ultimately what pleases God? What if adultery starts in the heart? What if hatred is just as evil as murder? What if every race and every group of people are known by God, called by God, and loved by God? Not just one group, not just our group. Jesus said that. What if instead of hating sinners for disobeying him, he actually loves them and sees them as wayward children? And so here Paul takes this lever of this question of what if. He takes it and he jams it into the question of the problem of evil, of judgment and grace. And he says something in this sort of these two what if statements. He says something which to us now is pretty familiar because, well, there have been Christians for thousands of years now, and so Christians have been talking about these ideas, this good news. But you have to imagine what it must have been like to hear this then, for the first time. What if God chose to patiently bear with the objects of his wrath? What if he was trying to turn people into objects of mercy, to show his glory and his beauty? It's like a sonic boom for the mind. If you would have heard that in that world, and with all of the kind of prevailing thinking, the dualistic thinking about God, if bad things happen to you, it's because you're cursed by God. If good things happen to you, it's because you did something right by God, and it's that simple. It's always that simple. And he's saying, what if it isn't so? What if God is not just some senile, powerless being doing nothing about injustice and evil in the world? Okay, good, so then he's powerful and wrathful. No, but what if he isn't just an irascible judge, an angry judge looking to punish and rain down fury and fire and some kind of furious expression of his power and his hatred for us who have sinned? What if, he's saying, this third way, what if God were both loving and just at the same time? What if he found a way to be both virtues fully without diminishing either, and in so doing, showing himself to be a new and more glorious alternative? And this is always what Jesus does to the mind. This little moment in this text for me is just very Christocentric. It is Jesus in the text. It's Jesus for us, because this is always what Jesus does to the heart. It's always what he does to the mind, to the conventions of our thinking about God. This is what he does. What if God is wrath, but he loves us? 2. What if he found a way? This is it. This is the gospel, guys. What if he found a way to be just, but also to spare us? To be fully just, to punish wrongdoing, but to spare us somehow. And what if, this is the way Hosea put it, what if a people who are not his people, who are the rightful objects of his judgment and wrath, could become his people, could become the children of God? And then Paul takes this lever and he applies it to the question of election. What if even the people who are not chosen could become chosen? It's almost like nonsense to say the people that aren't chosen could become chosen. But that's exactly what the cross does. And it breaks out of even rational thinking. It's another saying, well, I chose a people, and I said, I don't choose you, I choose you. And then it's like, what if because of Jesus, actually something could change in time and space in the cosmos, where the ones that were not chosen could become the ones that are chosen? Chosen before the foundations of the world. Chosen, picked by God. I choose you. I choose to show my glory and my mercy on you, through you. And we weren't chosen, but we become somehow chosen. I was in Publix the other day, and in South Florida, and this woman, she was kind of eyeballing me, I think, a little bit. She was a little older, and she was kind of giving me the look. And so I just put my head down and went about my business. You just linger a little, like the look was a little too long, just like, anyway, so it's fine. She might have been a little bit older than me, and so she's just shopping. It's fine. And then I turn around, I'm shopping for a while, and then I come around the aisle, and she's right there in front of me. And she dropped something. So it felt very Victorian England, drop a hanky and see if I pick it up. So it was like granola bars or something. So, being the gentleman that I am, I picked it up, handed it to her. And then she said, I kid you not, she says to me in Hebrew, "Are you Israeli?" And I was like, and I understood for some reason. I understood what she was asking me. And I said, no. And I smiled really big. I said, no, but I'm very flattered. That's very flattering. And it is. And I was flattered to be, asked that question. Not sure why. It then became sort of obvious to me that she was Jewish, but she wasn't just asking me if I was Jewish. She was asking me if I was Israeli. And I have that sort of, I guess, everyman look. Wherever I am, people think I'm from there somehow. So I was flattered. And I wasn't totally sure how, if she understood that comment. Because, of course, to me, it's full of all kinds of meaning. Why am I flattered? I'm flattered because, I have a great respect for the diaspora of the Jewish people. I have a great respect for their journey, for their fight for, through their own suffering, and some of the greatest ethical thinkers of modern times have been come from that people, that great people. Of course, the Lord whom I love and serve, Jesus, was ethnically Jewish. And so, I don't know, there's all kinds of things. I just feel honored. And furthermore, I just think anybody that's from a certain culture that projects onto you that you might be from their culture, I just feel like that's a gift. Like it's honoring somehow to say, I see you as me. I want you to be one of us, one of me. And so I wasn't sure. Maybe what I said was a little bit coy or something. And she said, and then her next thing was, I'm not trying to pick you up. That's what she said. I'm not trying to pick you up. I'm married. I'm not trying to pick you up. And it just became very awkward, like I'm married too, and you're just standing there in an aisle in Publix trying to make sure that something isn't happening. And then but then she stops. She says, how did you know what I said? If you're not Israeli, how did you know what I said? And I didn't really have an answer except to say, I just sort of, I don't know, I understood. I got the gist of it. I understood the gist of it. And she was still sort of puzzling by me. And then she told me her name. And then I said, again, it's flattering. I'm very flattered. And I guess we just sort of went on our way. I wondered what if did I answer wrongly, maybe? I don't know. Maybe that wasn't the right answer. Maybe I should have said, yes, actually I am Israeli. I mean, grafted in, yes, but yeah, I'm one of you now. I am of your people. I was not chosen, but I am chosen now. I was not a people. I was not of your people, but I am now beloved because of Jesus Christ. And of course, as always, when you walk away from a situation like that, you wish you would have been a better evangelist. You think I could have really said that. I could have said, yes, actually I am from Israel. I am one of your people, A Gentile grafted in because of Jesus Christ. That's the right answer. A people that were not chosen, who have become chosen. A people that were not Israel and are now very much a part of the people of God. And our hearts blossom and our minds begin to grasp the question that leads us to something our souls confirm is unmistakably true. We start with the what if. We start with the question of what if this isn't quite right? What if our conventional thinking has limited us? What if there's more than just the binary dualities that we've created for ourselves? What if God is so great that he's given us this other way? And then what happens, I think, to the soul, what happens to the adventurer, what happens to the discoverer, what happens to the inventor is that they immediately know when the right what if question is asked, they immediately ascend to the faith of the yes. You actually go from the what if to the faith of yes. You go, that's right. You know immediately in your soul. As soon as you think it, you know that's right. And this is why Paul isn't afraid to address this most important theological argument that he can make in the whole entire book. He's just saying, what if this is true, guys? What if actually the objects of God's wrath have become the objects of his mercy? What if God found a way in his greatness and his glory, which makes a kind of sense that he would find another way that we couldn't find on our own? What if that were true? And he's not saying it as if he's not sure. He's saying it because he wants to offer it to us as a lever to open up our minds so that when we hear it, faith is awakened in us and we say, that's right. And we take some step from questioning it to the step of saying, I know that is true. I know it. And now I know. Because I couldn't see that way before, but now I see it. Now I know. Jesus will always offer this sort of way, this leading us through the question to the place of faith. What if opens us up? It opens our hearts to the yes of faith. I'll tell you, I probably intimated it over the last months, and those of you that know me well know that, raising teenagers is hard and it's been difficult, but none of my kids more so than my girls. And I don't say that as a negative towards them. They're both amazing, beautiful, extraordinary girls. But man, they have caused me a lot of grief. So is Eve even here? Okay, good. All right, good. So, I feel older because of them. I feel like they're sucking the life force out of me, like the Dementors of Harry Potter or something. This is raising teenage girls. That might have been a little over the top. I felt that over there. Yeah, it's okay. It's hard. And man, I love them. And I think that the depth of my own kind of love and commitment for them and their need to kind of express themselves somehow beyond me, outside of their parents, is important. And so they're doing that. And, Eve maybe more so even than JL. Eve is just very, how should I put this? How should I say this? She is very, I've raised confident kids. And so she's fine with being different, and she's fine with being right even when she's wrong. And she doesn't have a problem with making bold decisions. And so she's made some bold decisions, some really bad, bold decisions that have kind of led her down difficult paths. And Monica and I have come to really a hard place with that. I mean, it's really, even turning to the Lord. So we were trying to decide, because of some of the kind of friend groups that she has at the school that she was going to, the public high school she's going to, and because of that, just the tension of all of that, it's like, man, have we done the wrong thing? Have we put her in a place which is like endangered her somehow spiritually? Of course, she's happy there. She doesn't want to change, but I mean, that's should we do something? Should we make some kind of change? And I just don't know. And one of the options is like a private school, Christian private school, which if you would have told me that I would send my kids to a Christian private school, there's just no way. I'm like least likely to send your kid to a Christian private school. But I mean, I'm at the end of my rope, so I'm like, I'll consider anything. So we're looking into it. We're looking into these options, and maybe we should put her in a different school, a different kind of school, a smaller school, a school with sort of like, I don't know, maybe a Christian faculty or something like that. And so we're thinking about it. And yeah, there's a part of me that's like, I don't love that idea, but maybe it's the right thing. And so, Lord, I'm open. What if it's the right thing? And so, what it came really down to for me is that it costs money, like a lot of money. Like there is no, they call it private because you got to freaking pay for it. And so it's a lot of money. And I'm not sure that sending people, no, if you send your kids to Christian school, God bless you, because now I understand. But still, I'm like, it could hurt your faith to go to a Christian school. Can I get an amen? It's possible that you actually become less Christian by being around a certain kind of Christian too much. So I'm like, I don't want to do anything to push her farther away from the Lord. And I just wasn't sure. And I wasn't sure if it would be good for her or bad for her. I just didn't know. I felt lost in the question. And so what it came down to for me was money. It came down to like, well, I don't have the money anyway. And this is a lot of money, thousands of dollars that I'm not sure I have, which I would be willing to go try to find it or get an extra job or do whatever I have to do. If that's what I was sure was best for my daughter, I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. But I just wasn't sure. Are you following my struggle here? So because I wasn't sure, I'm like, should I really spend all that money? And it actually doesn't help her, or it actually is worse for her, or something like that. I just didn't know. And so this is a school where Emily works, and I think maybe even a couple of you may work there. And so Emily's like, let me kind of talk to people. And so I was really struggling. And it was Wednesday. It was like a Wednesday morning, and I woke up super early. I woke up at dawn, and I just went for a long walk. And I just was wrestling with God. I just said, Lord, I feel like you owe me a favor. I gave you my whole life. I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for my baby girl. I need help here. I need you to do something. I need you to intervene in her life. I need you to show me that you've got this, because I don't, and I don't know what to do. And I need to know that you're involved here, and I need some kind of breakthrough here. And I'm begging. I'm not just begging you, I'm demanding. We have an understanding. My life is yours. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Now, hook me up over here with my daughter. I never talk to God like that. It's not my usual, that sort of audacity. It's not how I approach God, but it's how I'm being honest with you. That's how I was feeling that day, and that's how I was sort of communicating with God. So I didn't know this, but apparently the very next day, Monica gets a call from the school. And the school said, we've been thinking about Eve, and we've been talking about her because they had met her. We went for like an interview. And because it was still going to be thousands of dollars, I had decided, no, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth the risk. And so they called Monica and they said, we've been thinking about Eve. We really love Eve. We really want her. We've decided to scholarship her, no tuition. She can come for free to the school. And so that's obviously a massive thing. And I'm not so sure why they liked her so much, but she just has a way with people or something. Like, you don't know what you're asking for. You may want to charge later. They come back to me later like, we changed our mind. We'd like you to pay this money. So that was a big thing, obviously. And Monica tells me about this, I think, on Saturday of that week. This is like a month ago, maybe. On Saturday, and I said, well, okay, but isn't there other fees? She said, yeah, there are other fees. I said, well, tell me can you calculate the cost of the other fees? And she said, yeah. So she kind of figured it out. She said, I think the other fees are going to amount to $662, something like that. Plus you have to buy a uniform or a couple of uniforms. So $700, something like that. And I still was like, that's too much money. I don't have it, and I just am not 100% sure. And remember, I had been asking sort of the Lord to show me. And like moments after I had that conversation with Monica, someone walks over to me and said, oh, I meant to give this to you. Someone gave this to me to give to you. And I'm not kidding. This almost never happens to me. It was a check that someone had written to me, not to the underground, to me, for $700. And so this person's like, oh, I'm supposed to give this. Someone asked me to give this check to you. What an odd number, what an odd figure even. And so I kind of held the check in my hand and I just thought, okay, I see, I see you. I mean, what if he knows what he's doing? This is the what if question. What if he's not forgotten me? What if he's not sleeping in the life of my daughter? And what emerges then is the yes of faith. And so I said, okay, and I brought it to Eve, and I said, look, this is what happened. This has just happened this week. This is what we heard from the school. This person just gave us this exact amount of money. What do you think this means? And Eve just kind of looks at the ground. She looks up at me, and she says something cheeky like, well, I guess there's a God, or something like that. And even she knows that her life, even her waywardness, is still somehow invisibly being led by the hand of God. And so I hear God say to me, I come from the what if, to the yes. I come to you do care. I am beloved. I am your child. I am not forsaken or forgotten. I am known. I am beloved. And you will take care of my little girl. He comes for what Noam Chomsky calls the deep systems. The deep systems. Language, culture, identity. He goes into the deep systems. I don't know if you knew this, but part of what happened after Reconstruction in this country, when slavery was made illegal, and it's particularly in the South, where black people had been held as slaves, they could be referred to as slave. They could actually be called slave because that's what they were to their slave holders, their slave masters. And so because they no longer were slaves, no longer could be held as slaves, people couldn't call them slaves anymore. But what they did, what the white oppressor would do is refer particularly to black men as boy. And it was a way of sort of saying, to us, you're still below us. To us, you're still subservient. They may say that you're no longer a slave, but to us, you'll always be a boy. And this is partly why, really, for the decades that would go after the abolitionist movement and the era of Reconstruction, people still, to this day, in Southern America, will refer to a black man as boy. And it is a great and deep crime against the person in which it's said. It's not innocuous. It's wicked. And it's wicked because that's the deep system of language. And so what happened in the 60s, well, actually even earlier, even in the beginning of the abolitionist movement, there was a sort of a mantra, a phrase that was said by the abolitionists, and they're a little, you could sort of see the the vestiges of it in logos and so on. Am I not a man? The question, am I not a man? And so in the 60s and 70s, actually, black people, particularly black men, would greet each other by saying, man. Hey, man. What's up, man? This is the language of protest. This is getting to the deep system. Say, you're a man. That's what you are. You're a man. And actually, any of us now that use that language, which almost all of us probably do or have at some point, refer to each other as man. Just, what's up, man? We'll even say it to women. We'll say to women, like, hey, what's up, man? Or, and that, or what are you guys doing, or whatever. We masculinize it. And you could say, on the one hand, maybe that is a vestige of some kind of chauvinism, which it probably is at some level. But I don't think so. I actually think it's the language of protest. We should be proud of that. If a woman says to another woman, hey, man, or whatever, I think it's saying yes to that deeper language protest of saying, you know what, we're going to stand with real men. I remember if you remember the scenes from the place of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, where he was killed there in Memphis, Tennessee. It was a garbage worker strike, and all of those garbage workers. This is guys. What 150 years later, this is men who are still doing the work of slaves, picking up garbage, and yet they knew that the protest was not about the work, because all work has dignity. It's not the work itself. It's the feeling that you're somehow less than other people. And so if you remember the placards that all of those men, those garbage workers wore at that final speech that King gives, their signs were, I am a man. I'm a man. And I think that's where these questions must go. They must go to the deep questions of identity. The deep systems. In the deep system, we are not a people. In the deep systems, we don't speak of ourselves as God's children. In the deep systems, we are an alienated people. In the deep systems, we are objects of wrath. And this is the citation that he uses here from Hosea. But we need to protest that language. This is what he's giving us, even from the old prophet. He's saying, look, say this other thing. Know this other identity. We need to protest the language of that failed kingdom and choose the language of the new Jerusalem. You're not a boy, you're a man. You're not objects of wrath anymore. Because of Jesus, you are objects of mercy. You're not worthless, you're loved. You're not aliens, you're citizens. You're not strangers, you're children. And this is our protest. This is why we preach about the love of God. Because we're at war with evil and the hatred of sin and death. And this is our message. The what if of God's love. The what if of Jesus' life and death and resurrection. To tell the truth, I think we ought to be asking that what if question to every single person we meet. Where are you going right now in your life? Where has he sent you? Who are you telling this truth to? Who are you asking that question? Who are you using that lever to open up the heart and the mind? We ought to make the people around us think again about God and to ask, what if? What if? What if he's not mad at you? What if mercy really has triumphed over judgment? What if Jesus really is the image of the visible God? What if he really did come from the Father full of grace and truth? And this is the gospel. This is what we offer to the world, but it's also what we continue to partake of ourselves. What if God? And we ought to ask it of everyone we meet. We ought to bring that to every place where we've been sent and called. We need microchurches asking the question, being sent to ask the question. And so we tell this good news. But we tell it for the sake of those who hear, and we tell it so that we also can remember. Some of you know that we lost last week, I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago, that weekend, we lost Monica's mother. That's probably the closest person that I've buried. And it affected me in ways I wasn't expecting. But there was this moment early on where we found out that she had lost consciousness. The ambulance came. They could not revive her. And she had been taken to the hospital, unrevived, in the ambulance. And so there was still sort of a glimmer of hope, still sort of a question of hope. And everyone was upset. Everyone was dealing with it. Everyone was crying. But particularly the little one, Skylar, the 7-year-old, 6-year-old. I don't know how old he is. The littlest one. How old is he? Mom? Thank you. 7. Was really upset because he was afraid he was going to lose his grandmother. And in point of fact, he already had lost his grandmother. And when word finally came to us that she had actually died, that we had really lost her, he was just beside himself. And so was Luke, and so was Eve, so was everyone really. But I watched Luke, so Luke is the 15-year-old, come in and lay beside, we're all in my room, we're all in the bed, and he lays beside Skylar, the 7-year-old, and he starts explaining to him about eternity. And I know that maybe next to Monica, Luke is taking it the hardest. He's dealing with it the most. He's the most sensitive, the most emotional anyway. And I watched him go from being a basket case, really, to now having to talk to his little brother and explain to his little brother that now her pain has gone away, that now she's with Jesus, that now she walks in the presence of God and the angels. And he's explaining to this little mind, this little soul that does not understand this truth which he needs to know, that he needs to remember. And I watched him with all his little confidence explain what I knew that he was wrestling with in a deep and existential place personally. This is what the gospel does for us. We share the gospel. We must share the gospel with the people around us because they need it, because they will die without putting their faith in this possibility, this what if, this truth. They have to have it or they will not live forever. We have an obligation. We're compelled to share it with them. But I say that and I put it aside. But also, we must say it for ourselves so that we remember. So that we don't lose touch, so that we hold on to our own hope. We need the uninitiated. We need the simpler mind. We need the person that has not yet heard. We need them. We need someone younger than us, someone that does not know. Guys, we have to be discipling people. We have to be being in evangelistic relationships, or we die as Christians. We cannot be Christian if we're not finding someone who knows less than us and pouring out what we have and giving it to them. Not because we're obligated, not because it's a duty, but because that's what makes us alive in Christ Jesus. Because we have to remember again these rudimentary truths which hold us, which anchor us to this future which God has for each of us. In a world surrounded by death, the older must comfort the younger with the words of hope and life. But still it falls to us, to both of us, believe. The little one must believe for himself, and the older one must believe again for themselves. And so he asked, I watched his little mind ask the question, what if she hasn't died? What if she has only fallen asleep, as the New Testament writers would put it, and has been awakened in the presence of God? What if death isn't the end? What if it's only the beginning? What if this isn't a day for sorrow, but of joy? And even through his own pain, he was saying to his little brother, we can rejoice today. The end of pain and the beginning of eternity. And our hearts, when they hear, they say, yes, that is right. That is true. That is correct. This other thing I was struggling with that just didn't feel right, it couldn't be right somehow. And then I hear the what if of God, I hear the what if of Jesus, and I say, yes, that is right. Guys, we need more microchurches. We need more people discipling people. If you're not in a relationship with someone who knows less about God with you than you, and you're not pouring in what God has told you to them, repent today and make a decision to do that. Go find someone who does not know as much as you, or has not been told as much as you, or there are things that you know that which you must give to other people. Do it. Find a way. Whether they've said yes to Jesus yet or not is less important than the question of whether or not you're just pouring yourself out and you're giving what's been given to you and you're saying what must be said again to your own soul so you don't wither and die. We need microchurches in more places. We need more of us doing this. We need to get in little communities to do it to groups of people that have still not heard this wonderful, amazing good news. That God doesn't hate you. He wants to forgive you. That Jesus is real, the fullest expression of God's love for you, and so on. You know the story, you must tell it. Guys, bow your heads with me. Lord, as we come to this table this morning, we come in an act of both protest and memory to say that a people that were not a people, that were not chosen, have become chosen because of your mysterious grace. We come again to this table urged by you to remember, and so we do. On the night Jesus was betrayed, after giving thanks, he took bread and he broke it. He said, this is my body, which is broken for you. Take it and eat it to remember me. And likewise, after supper, he took the cup and he said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for the forgiveness of sin. Drink it, each of you, to remember me. And there is a connection somehow between this table and the remembering of the sacrifice and gifts of Jesus, the grace of God in Jesus Christ, and proclamation, because he says, and whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. We must remember and we must proclaim. And so I'm asking, as I do from time to time, I'm asking before you come to this table this morning that you would do business with God, that you would, if you need to, repent, whatever you feel God placing on your heart. Is there enough people in your life that you're passing on this truth to? Just ask that question. Say, Lord, and even now, Holy Spirit, if there's someone you want to put on our heart that you want us to go to and to say, can I spend time with you? Can I tell you what I know about God? Can I give you as a gift all that I've learned about God? Lord, if you want to just put a picture in our mind or a person that we're supposed to ask that for. And if there isn't anyone, if you can't think of anyone, then just pray right now. Actually say, Lord, please send me someone that I can be faithful to you in this way, that I can proclaim the great what if to that person and also see the yes of faith in them and again in me. And then as people that want to proclaim his death and as people that want to remember, when you're ready, just come forward and take again these elements, the body and blood of Jesus given for you.